Good morning, everybody. Today is Sunday, September 27th, and you are watching or listening to another episode of Forward Maryland. My name is Bill Woodcock.
And I'm Jason Booms.
Jason, how's your weekend going so far?
Oh, God. Well, Bill, as part of Howard County's most sober podcast, I'm pleased that it's going quite well so far.
Well, that's glad to hear. And I would say that my weekend is also going well so far in this dreary, unexpectedly drizzly last weekend of September, first weekend of fall in Howard County. We can feel the seasons changing. And as we feel the seasons changing on the weekend, we know that business is about to pick up. And so it's with very little ado, not no further ado, but a slight amount of ado, that I introduce today's guest for the podcast. He is a senior professional staff member at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory. He is currently a member of the Howard County's Board of Appeals. He is a past candidate for House of Delegates in District 12 in the 2018 elections. And he is also and has been a member of the Howard County Charter Review Commission. And here today to talk with us about the commission and that process and the questions that you are going to be asked to fill out on your ballot, be it online, mail-in, early vote, or in person, is Dr. James Howard. Jamie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here on Maryland's most truculent podcast.
Indeed, it is. The pleasure is all ours, kind sir.
Sure. Yes, it is, but it's rude for me to say that.
No, but with all of the stuff going on, and we know that Board of Elections or Board of Education stuff is important. We get the silly emails from the candidate in the 7th Congressional District who thinks she has a chance, all that other stuff. People forget that they're going to be voting on ballot questions. Oh, Jason, I wasn't even going to say the name, but you did not either. But I'm amazed you're getting mail. That's cool. That's weird.
Oh, yeah, they're definitely wasting money. They're wasting money on this house, so I'm fine.
Do I get to hold up a picture too?
If you want to.
Look at this adorable baby.
Oh, that was a much cuter picture than the one.
I know, it was.
I
only happened to be sitting right here, so I pulled it out.
In the water. Hold up. Which at my age is saying something.
Oh dear.
But we also are voting on ballot questions. There are statewide ballot questions. Some of you may have seen the commercials for the allowing sports gambling for education commercials, but we also have county ballot questions in the form of county charter amendments. So, James, walk us through that process. What is the Charter Review Commission? How did it happen? How is it formed? And what did it do?
Well, those are all good questions. I'm trying to figure out where to start now. So the Charter Review Commission first came together in May, I think, maybe March or May of last year. I'd have to check. And we were all picked by members of the county council, and then through a resolution, we were all appointed to the Charter Review Commission. The Charter Review Commission happens every 8 years, and here's the thing, right? I would hope that the people who are listening to this are kind of familiar, but it turns out I don't think that's the case. The Howard County Charter is like the Constitution for our county. And it is a lengthy and very boring document that describes government, how it should interact with each other, how the different parts should interact with each other. But then there's also a lot of nonsense in there about, like, the fiscal year starting on a particular day and that kind of stuff, where you're just like, this probably doesn't need to be in the charter, but here we are. And so I think that, it is an unnecessarily complicated document, but very few organizational documents are as broadly stated as, say, the United States Constitution is. I mean, if you look at the state of Maryland's Constitution, it includes provisions for off-street parking in Baltimore City, which is, the kind of thing that you do not think of as normally a constitutional issue, but in Maryland it is. And so, it's a complicated document, and how that document interacts with individuals in their daily course of life is something I think most of them, well, they don't understand it because they don't have to think about it. And I can go back to, just kind of frame this situation. When I was teaching public policy up at the University of Baltimore years ago, one of the things I asked my students was, who is your, they could tell me who the president was. You could tell me who the vice president was, most of them. And we're talking grad students here. Grad students in public policy. These are students who should know this stuff. And then when you ask them who their member of the House of Delegates was, or who their council member was, they couldn't answer those questions. And I reminded them that you're sitting here in a school that's funded and organized by the state. These things matter to you. When you walk outside, you're crossing a city-owned street. These things matter. Local government is what matters. And there's this old statement, that all politics is local, and then it gets interpreted into this idea that, local government is what matters the most. That's really not incorrect. What all local politics is local means is that all politics is retail. But it doesn't change the fact that local government is the thing you touch most frequently. Whether it was, the 5 public roads I was on in the last, 15, 20 minutes before we got on here, or the or the fact that I'm carrying on this conversation with you over a Verizon line that is where the right of way was established by the state. I mean, this is just how government works. And so but then now that I've stressed how important it is, it's also important to understand what's not in there. And it was interesting to me that so many of my fellow commissioners did not initially understand what was in the document. And I guess that was okay, but it meant we had to go through a learning process together. For instance, they didn't understand that we didn't have the ability to touch the operations of the schools at all. We didn't have the ability to, well, that was really the big one. And, but on top of that, we had a lengthy list of things which basically we couldn't touch because Maryland's courts had already said no. And that was the part that came as a surprise to me, because one of the things we really wanted to do was hack on the zoning process in a meaningful way. And I think that was a place where we failed. And I think that there are some complications that occurred because of it. But anyway, so what we did is we, and that's the framework for discussing this. I think that's the prelude to what really happens, is that we went out and we did 3 listening sessions at different parts of the county. And I think we had a grand total of like 11 people come among the 3, and it was 11, 12. It was in the very low. It was only just 2 digits, and that was frustrating because we would not find people who actually cared about these issues. And then we move into the we take what we know, because a lot of us came in with ideas, a lot of us developed ideas as we were there, and that became a little, we started formulating ideas and seeing how we could make it work. And some ideas were silly and got tossed out, and some ideas were good but not appropriate for the charter, and some ideas were good but the court said we can't do it. So once we came up with that list, we then went out and did one and said, this is our draft recommendations, please come and tell us what you think. At which point people then started asking us questions. Well, why didn't you include this? And why didn't you include that? Where were you 6 months ago? It's very frustrating in that regard. But, we ended up coming up with, we have our draft recommendations. They got tweaked a little bit out of that process. and we submitted them to the county council, which promptly ignored almost all of them. So, I mean, that's the process in a nutshell, including, I think, I mean, there were failures in this process, but those failures are due to lack of interest and not procedural failures. It's really hard to get people interested in something that is arcane and boring and it's boring. I mean, I'm a nerd and I like it, and I still think it's kind of boring, dealing with the charter.
So what amendments did make it through the council?
I believe there was exactly one. Let's talk about what we recommended, though.
Okay.
That we should lay down some groundwork here. One is that we should, and I pulled up the list here, so if I look a little weird, that's why.
Now, can this include some of the silly stuff that was tossed out?
This is the stuff that we actually recommended, so
Okay.
which is the stuff I have in front of me. I mean, there was numerous. I'm sure I could come up with something, but I mean, geez, that was a while ago. We think that we had 9 total recommendations we agreed on, and I think the big one for us was that the council should be expanded from 5 to 7 members.
Right.
And I did, a back of the envelope analysis, and I can send you a link to that if you'd like it. That's on my website, where I found that if you look at Howard County, we have a very high number of people per representative, and it's not the highest, but it is substantially higher than the state's average. So we thought that moving to 7, which would bring us right to the state average, or just below the state average, would be advantageous. Now, there were certainly, there are valid reasons. I don't see a lot of valid reasons to object to this. One of the biggest objections we heard was, well, this will cost money as we have to add offices to the building. Like, that's really the silliest reason to fight this.
Democracy costs money.
Huh?
Democracy costs money.
Democracy costs money. This is silly. But there's also the fact is we had an opportunity to make that change in a powerful way, because we're doing redistricting for the next 10 years anyway next year. So, jumping from 5 to 7 members is no big deal. And, one of the things is, and then, the Board of Elections representative talked to us about, changing that. And it says it would create new districts, and that would be problematic for, I'm sorry, not new districts, but it obviously creates new districts. But, it's likely to increase the number of precincts, which increases the cost of running an election. And, a quick back of the envelope shows that, if you have 5 versus 7 districts, at 7 districts, given the total number of possible overlapping districts, you only end up with a minimum of 70 precincts, and we have 120 something right now. So I'm like, that's clearly a bogus argument against this. I think that there's a lot of reasons, and then how that would be structured would be another question. For instance, should it be 7 districts? Should it be 6 districts plus, an at-large council president kind of thing, which is what we see in Baltimore City? Should it be, keep the 5 district scheme, but add 2 at-large districts, kind of mirroring what we see in Montgomery County, which does, I think, 7 and 4. There's a lot of different ways that could go. And what we ended up suggesting was that it should be 7 districts. And there were some, reasons to do that. And we think that, like I said, now is a very good time to do that because of redistricting. And with that in mind, it becomes, hold on a second here, more difficult to do it in 8 years. So, that said, still doable. Just now was the perfect time to do it. Another recommendation we had was to change the structure of the redistricting commission. And this is, I think, the dirty secret in Howard County. The redistricting commission is appointed actually by the political party central committees, effectively, because each party that gets more than 25% of the last gubernatorial vote or something like that, or county executive vote or something like that, gets to name 3 members to the redistricting commission.
And just to be clear, Jamie, we're talking about the county's redistricting commission for council. We're not talking about state legislature, and we're not talking about schools.
No.
Right.
Well, we'll come to schools in a second.
Right. Okay.
Because the schools actually tie into both redistricting and number of members, but we'll come to that in a moment since you bring it up. And with that in mind, I think that that's inherently inequitable if we have political parties making that decision. And I also think it's ridiculous that it locks out an entire, about 25% of the potential. There's also one more person appointed who is the appointed by the majority vote of the council. Now, what happens here, and I think this is ridiculous, is that effectively the Republican Party, and without getting into a discussion of the merits of different parties' political views, for whatever reason, the Republican Party is a super minority party in Howard County. It has less than 25% by registration. And, very few places have a majority party by registration because it's usually about a one-third balance, skewed one way or the other, depending on. We have more than 50% of our registered voters are Democrats. And then the next largest block is independents. So, we've given, the Republican Party a set of representatives on this commission that is outsized versus other groups that, should or should not be there. And then, then it became, well, what if we do all registered parties? I'm like, well, yeah, Bread and Roses is the only other registered party. And, I think there are a total of 25 members, and they now suddenly get to put 3 of them on the commission. Not, again, to question Bread and Roses.
I think of at least one member from Howard County you might be able to find.
I can't imagine anyone in Howard County who's a member of Bread and Roses.
I am not a card-carrying member.
You're not a card-carrying member. Yeah, but that's lack of is that lack of motivation or what for you? There is no Green Party anymore in Maryland. There is no Libertarian Party. Sure, there are people who claim to be affiliated with these parties, but, And so this does tie into the school district issue because, the way, and I can list off numerous reasons why the way districts, the school board selection was screwed up by the state. But one of them was it married districts to the council districts. So if the county were to expand to 7, you can't do it anymore. And also, so also redistricting changes the shape of school boundaries. School district board members. So that becomes a real problem. There is a highly technical amendment that we recommended. And this has everything to do with the fact that when this was originally enacted, you would get the results of the census every 10 years at the end of the year, essentially. And then, the first election would be the primary in September for the statewide primary. The problem is the statewide primary has been moved to June, and now that's 3 months less for the redistricting commission to do their job. And with that in mind, we just tried to say, okay, we squeezed the dates, the expected dates of, this is the day they have to turn in their paperwork. This is the day the council has to do something by. This is the day the county executive has to do something by in that process. There's also a recommendation, and that is one of the ones that's moving forward. That is a technicality, but also a necessity. It just has to be done. Technically, you could, only, the rules only set the maximum for when a report can come back in by, but at the same time, now it's enforced by the charter. There's no reason on earth the county council can't amend it sooner. But that last part where if a plan becomes law, if not signed by the county executive, did have to move up. So there has to be changes. We just may as well fix it all. Another one of our recommendations, which is moving forward, is to reduce the term of office for appointed boards from 5 years to 3 years. And this recommendation came from the county executive's office because they expressed that it can be difficult to find somebody willing to commit for a 5-year term. And I get that. I'm at the end of, 2 5-year terms on the Board of Appeals. would not accept another one if offered and can't be given another one anyway because of term limits. Mostly because I'd like to do something else for a while. And so trying to find somebody who wants to, and I love this stuff and I think this is important work and it's great work and I enjoy doing it. But at the same time, 10 years is a lot of time. So the way it's currently structured is that, it's 2 5-year terms, and actually Board of Appeals will not be changing in this proposal. And that is yet another technicality that's not worth going into. But the proposal is that if you have, currently you get 2 5-year terms, and you have a 5-year term, and then you get a 5-year, you're eligible for another 5-year term if your total term of office, a total term has been less than 8 consecutive years. So if you fill out the remainder of somebody else's term, you can keep going as long as at the time you're appointed to the second term, it's been less than 8. So, you can actually go up to 13 that way. If you are, the way it's going to go now is we're keeping that 8-year limit, but we're doing it with 3 years. 3-year terms. So you could actually do 3 terms, but subject to, so it's 9 years, objectively is kind of the target here. But I guess it could go up to 11 if you really wanted to. But, it also gives us an opportunity to cycle through these positions a little bit quicker. I am concerned that we're going to have more vacancies because it's more work to do, finding nominees, getting nominees through the council, getting them acclimated. I mean, you spend a year just trying to figure out where your pants are, when you're doing one of these things. And I think that that's a complicated aspect. But, at the same time, that ramp up period is not going to change. And 9 versus 10, who cares? But I'm a little concerned about that if we start looking at people who are going to be 3 years and then off. So that's moving forward too. We had a recommendation about how the county solicitor's office works. And what it essentially does is it confirms that the Office of Law is fully independent of the county executive's office. It functionally is. It would just kind of, make that a thing. There was a recommendation about notice requirements saying at least 1 electronic medium, because right now it says something about how you have to put in 2 newspapers of record or something, and there are no such things anymore. This is again a technical issue. Let's see here. There was a recommendation, and then this is where things get really complicated. This is a recommendation that would vastly expand the County Board of Appeals.
In what way?
Its role. And so one of the things it would do is it would change its board, its membership from 5 to 3 years, which is a huge change, and this is separate because the Board of Appeals terms are specified separately from the generic statement about boards. But also, it would have effectively given the Board of Appeals the power of the zoning board. Now, many of them anyway. And this is in line with how some other counties do it. And, I wanted to talk about the zoning board. It's a lot here, so we'll come back to that. And then there's a changing calendar dates to business days. So those are the things we recommended. The 2 that are moving forward are reducing the terms, which is, I don't know. I mean, I think it's probably a good idea. And also the technical amendments for redistricting. Now, the thing is that I really wanted to see is that in Howard County, the county council is also the zoning board. So, they adjourn the meeting of the county council, reconvene as the zoning board, usually with a different chair, because that's how they do it, and conduct, quasi-judicial hearings. Now, there are many people who are concerned about how developer contributions can influence the county council, because really it's the same person. And it's a person being elected who's getting those donations and then later making those decisions. Now, part of the problem here is that the zoning board is effectively a legislative body, which limits the ability constitutionally to transfer those authorities to another body. Now, I look at this and say, legislatures transfer legislative authority all the time. It's the rulemaking power. And I think that this could be done in a way that satisfies constitutional requirements and is also an effective implementation. Oddly enough, this doesn't require a charter amendment, because this is all created by statute, by ordinance. So the county council can change it, with 3 votes in the county executive signature. So I think that that's something that should really be reconsidered substantially, not through the charter review process, although we did attempt to attack it there, but to, really reconsider how we do that. There was a desire to maybe make a new zoning board elected, although I just think that transfers the problem from one group of individuals to a different group of individuals, and then the zoning board inevitably becomes a stepping stone to the county council. So I think that having if we could separate out the zoning board and make it appointed, that's the best we can do to insulate it from the political process. The idea that we could ever completely insulate it from the political process is obviously, impossible. So I think we have to do what is normally done under these circumstances. But how this works, or how we might proceed, is going to require something that is, I think, outside the charter review process, and requires serious effort from the county council and a lot of other stakeholders in this process.
So of these recommendations that didn't get picked up on, I'm assuming that these were rejected by a majority vote of the county council. Is there any opportunity to revisit these before the next charter review? Is there, and of course, I would imagine that the next commission does not necessarily need to review the recommendations of the last one that didn't.
We did review the last set, yes, we did, but there's no obligation to. It just made sense.
Right. So all the other ones that didn't make it, other than those 2, which, they seem okay. Doesn't seem to be much of anything people would have much of a concern about. They don't seem, in my opinion, particularly visionary.
Sorry.
It's not your fault. But the other ones are goners then.
Well, so that is another fun question. So they were never voted down. They were never even proposed to the county, because like any other piece of legislation, somebody has to introduce a bill. So if nobody introduced a bill, it never got voted on. Now, there were some other versions of the what do you call that thing? How the redistricting commission would work that were even worse than what we have now, that were proposed, and I'm quite happy to see that went nowhere. That was DOA.
So Jamie, my question is who approved the recommendations to go on the ballot?
So that's the county council's job. What they do is they take a proposal.
Well, right.
It's a bill just like any other. Well, not quite just like any other. And
okay. So what you're saying is that the other 7 just never even made it into a bill?
Yeah, didn't. I think
okay, so it's not a matter of anyone voted it down. They were
nobody cared enough to even propose it.
Right. That's fascinating. Especially when it comes to the whole seven member issue, because that's been something that's been talked about in this county for a long time.
Well, and that's where things get, that's where you get into this odd political dynamic, right? Because in order to pass a charter amendment, you need 4 members of the county council to vote yes.
Okay.
And then it has to go to the voters for ratification at the next general election. So, and that can happen at any time. Like, they could take one of these recommendations and propose it tomorrow, and there's no way we'd see it on the next ballot. We'll see it in 2022, just due to the timings. But yeah, you can do this. You can do it in 2025 as far as anybody cares. It's just the process as it's laid out. It made sense to move the redistricting and council to 7 in this particular cycle. Anything else, and that was something we even toyed with doing, was saying, let's make an we really are committed to these as a commission. There was some dissent on that, but the commission was generally approving of this. Why don't we say, release these early to give the council the ability to, go through their process and even have an extended process. And then coronavirus hit and everything ground to a halt, as it has everywhere else. So we ended up getting our recommendations out. They took some recommendations that they were interested in, and move forward with them. But they could revisit these at any time, or anything else they wanted to propose. I mean, there are other things that they wanted to propose. For instance, I don't remember what the one was, but council member Jones had several proposals in that I don't remember if what they were. There was one about changing some of the statutory language from making a council man to council person across the board, for instance, and fixing all those instances. Because they actually tried to do that in 2011 and missed about 11,000 instances. It was ridiculous. But yeah, no, they can revisit this at any time.
Question. I just have a curiosity. I know we're mixing up the sort of the reality with the structural, but do you think going to a 7-member council would exacerbate the current 3-block problem, or do you think it might help resolve it?
I don't know. You look at the U.S. Senate and tell me, how does 100 members work? I don't think it would make a difference in that regard. I do think that in one sense, it's easy to look at whatever district size it is. And this isn't to call out a particular member. I mean, they're mostly good people. Oh, you know who I'm talking about. And but I think that it's very easy, as a person who spends a lot of time swimming in these waters, let's say, to consider looking at it as, they're fiefdoms. And one of the things you can do is reduce the size of the fiefdom to, help, move. And it's about putting people closer to the people they represent. I mean, if we had, something like 30,000 people per representative, per council member, I think that would be a lot different than, the, 48, 50 something we have right now. I forget what it is. So I think that that's a huge difference. Mm-hmm. But that's me. I think that, we're still not going to see, a Libertarian or Green Party member elected to the county council. So I think what we end up doing is we'll end up seeing a 4-way block. But I mean, the other thing to remember is, the 3-way block is an interesting problem, because at the end of the day, you could redistrict county council into 5 majority Democratic districts without even trying. I mean, that is how the voter registration balance is in this county. There's, the idea that, for instance, there's this guaranteed Republican seat out west is a myth that does not reflect reality at all. It's very easy to redistrict Howard County that way, and it wouldn't even look gerrymandered at the end of the day. I mean,
that's my next question.
You wouldn't have a splatted bug anyway. I mean, you could do it with small compact districts. I
was saying, how spirally is this going to look?
Not at all. Not saying I have the models already on hand. I wouldn't do anything like that.
I do have, well, if you don't mind, I have one Barbara Walters question for you.
Yeah, and I hope you don't mind me going on what was a fairly lengthy rant here on your show. So
that's all right. That's all right. We have about 15 minutes left, and I know we want to get to some other subject matter, but go ahead, Jason.
Barbara Walters, me.
So the rumors with her and Richard Pryor. No, but
no, what's that?
No, not that. But as far as
those rumors are a lie and are unfounded, and I wish I could find the person who started them.
All right. Firm stance. But as far as your motivation to serve on the Charter Review Commission, so why?
I had 2 goals. One was 7-member districts, which I think that's an important change to make. And 2, I think we need to see change with respect to how the zoning board is structured. Now, over time, I came to the realization that it made more sense to change the zoning board outside of the charter, because, there's a huge difference between getting 4 votes and ratification versus 3 votes and the signature of the county executive. But I still think that that's an important issue. I just think that the charter is probably not the right way to do that today. Those were the things that I wrote a blog post back in 2018, 2019, I don't remember, before we did it, and it must have been 2018, saying, doing the analysis on members of the, what do you call that thing, on the size of different legislatures across the state. And then I posted to Facebook and tagged Opal Jones, who's newly elected. It was saying, hey, this is me trying out for charter review. I mean, that was, because I do think that that's a core issue that we need to address. And I am disappointed that the county council did not want to move forward on that. I think that it's possible, and I haven't heard anything one way or the other. If somebody came to me and said, well, given the limited circumstances we can do, given the limitations of the long now, as it were, we didn't want to make that kind of radical a change when we can't have people actually come in and give testimony. Well, okay, I'll buy that. But if it's just a matter of we don't want to do it, that's a load of nonsense.
Fair enough. All right. Bill, I think you're going to ask something?
Yeah, I guess and thank you, James, for this amazingly detailed and thorough discussion of the commission and what it does. I guess the only other question I have is, again, getting back to these issues of taking stuff back off the table that, the other recommendations that have been panned. And I guess I should know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask you: Is there any ability in Howard County for, say, a referendum for one of these ideas to become the subject of a petition that then could go to the ballot?
I cannot think of one off the top of my head. I don't think there's a way to do that, because the way a referendum works is actually as a review of how do I want to say? Amendments. Oh, okay, here we go. I have the charter amendment provision in front of me now. It says amendments may also be proposed by petition filed with the chairperson of the county council and signed by not less than 20% of the registered voters of the county, or 10,000 of such registered voters in case 20% of the number registered is greater than 10,000. I don't know how many registered voters we have, so it's probably more than 10. It'd probably be 10,000 sufficient.
It's so, more than 100,000 people. So
yeah, so we probably have about that many. We have a lot of registered voters. So when proposed, whether by resolution of the council or by petition, the chairperson of the county council shall make it available to the press. Yada yada yada. And it's you have to voters, and then it looks to me, and I'm just reading this on the fly. It shall be submitted to the voters of the county if you get 10,000 signatures. It doesn't have to be approved by the county council. So yeah, go ahead, go nuts.
Well, you never know what might happen.
I'm sorry?
You never know what might happen.
I think, and that's one of the problems that we do have in Howard County is historically, what do you call those things? Petitions for referendum to review a law don't, necessarily collect a number of signatures very easily. I think that trying to organize that as an online process where basically you have people print out every form, sign it. You have to sign it twice because of the witness requirement.
Yeah, I'm also disappointed. This is my last thing on the subject. I'm also disappointed that the requirement for electronic notifications didn't get of public notices didn't get much more play, because I remember having our local register of wills, Byron McFarland, on, and that was a major issue in terms of regular folks just needing to put on their notify people of a will or of a probate action.
Yeah,
they use 2 newspapers of record, and there's no online state register of wills thing where people can do this. I mean, it seems a little bass-ackward, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think that I'm not as concerned about that because the county already does it. It's just not mandated by the charter. They do it anyway, because really that's where people want the information. I mean, enough people clamor for it. It happens regardless. Mm-hmm. it's a relatively, I mean, it's essentially cost free to do it, so they do. So I'm not as concerned about that not moving forward, because we have it in practice if we don't have it in the charter. And it's always good to have, I guess, codification of things like that. But at the same time, I don't view it as a high priority, because I think that if we need to fight a battle to do something important, I think that we need to focus on the bigger structural issues that are there.
Cool. Jason, you have any other questions about charter review?
Gosh, I mean, this has all been incredibly informative. I know our listeners will love it, and I don't think I have any more questions on it at the moment.
Yeah.
Oddly enough.
Well, while we're talking about anachronistic ways to get information out to people, there is a little something going on Tuesday night called the first presidential debate. So
oh boy!
I will be bringing our post-game analysis and review on Wednesday, but I'd also like for the esteemed Dr. Howard to sit for this segment as well. Jason, I'll give you the first pass. What are your expectations for what we're going to see Tuesday evening?
Well, Bill, I think we're going to see two candidates with pulses on that night. Anything else? I mean, what? I have no idea.
So
how do you game this out? I mean, if you're, and I know they went through the the mock debates. Do you believe Trump will be the person he's been his entire life, or do you think he'll try to wheel out a new gear? I mean, it's going to be a bloodbath.
Gear is more like it.
I mean, it's going to be brutal. It is just going to be absolute, just a horror show. Your thought?
Mine?
Yes.
Oh, I think that the president is going to do everything he can to try to get under Joe Biden's skin. And I don't understand. I mean, Trump is Trump, right? And God, say one thing for him, he's predictable. He says what he's going to do, and then he's going to do it. So they're already talking about bringing up Hunter Biden. I'm sure he'll have a shot or two across Bo's brow, because why not insult a dead public servant who is also a soldier, who is also the vice president's son?
Very predictable.
I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be no holds barred on his side. And I think that the best thing that Vice President Biden could do is to to throw out a few white 70-year-old man slaps back at Trump for basically being a baby and a goofball, as 70-year-old plus white men can do, in his Joe from Scranton way, and stay above it. I think we're going to see the Biden temper flash, but I think it's going to be in calculated measure. And I think it's going to be for Biden to serve as in the role of every person who hates Trump and, pick his shots and take those shots and leave it at that. Dr. Howard, your thoughts?
So I think, there is a story that's been floating around for a few days now, which is that, senior GOP leaders, whatever that means, are concerned about the outcome of specifically this debate, because the president in particular and his supporters have spent so much time lowering expectations with respect to Senator Biden's forthcoming performance that basically, if Biden keeps his pulse during the debate, he'll be the de facto winner. And I think that there's a lot of truth in that. If you hang out, I have a tendency, because I grew up in Southwest Ohio, which is, am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, so it's a shithole. So, and there's a reason I don't live there. And I think that, and I still read the newspaper there, and I see the comments there, and sometimes I often get involved in. I would not call them debates; they're not equipped to handle that. But I think that there's there's a certain mentality where, you know, the suggestion is that, you know, the senator has dementia, and I'm like, that first of all, that there's simply no evidence of that. Second of all, when people do look for evidence, it's that Senator Biden will occasionally stutter or have trouble with individual sentences or words, but that's because he has a long-standing speech impediment. So not only is it, you know, inaccurate to say he has dementia, it's absolutely freaking offensive. So I think that you know, but that mentality has become so persistent that, like I said, if he comes to the platform and he stays alive the whole time, he wins, because expectations have been pushed so far down. And you're not supposed to, and good politics is you don't push down the expectations of your opponent, you push them down on yourself. And you know, this is a difficult thing. And I think that there's the right thing for him to do in handling President Trump is to let him go. Just let him talk. There's old wisdom: never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake, and just let him go right off the edge. And that is something that Secretary Clinton never did during the debate. She would respond to him. You just got to take a step back and let him drive the truck right off the cliff.
It would be nice at that moment to have Biden be able to say, are you done? We finished? and just let him talk us up all the way through.
I think that there's also...
Those are exactly those sort of little microaggressions that I can see Joe unleashing. You know, are you done lying yet? Or just, you know, or just like little zingers, you know, because a thing I read in today's paper, and remember back when Trump was at the UN, the first time he spoke to the General Assembly.
I think I blocked that out.
The economy was the best ever and all this. And the delegates, many of them were heads of state, laughed. And that is the thing that Trump cannot handle, is to be mocked. And I think that I think mockery, and that, I mean, you know, not, you know, playing it up for jokes and yucks and making fun of him, but subtle mockery is the way to go.
Yeah, I would go subtle mockery, or if the opportunity presented itself. I mean, you've got a bully. I don't know about you, but every popular cultural movie I've seen in the past 40 or 50 years, when you stand up to the bully, well, that's a great Hollywood moment. You know, get in his face. I still believe the one last obstacle that Trump managed to pass this hurdle in 2016 was when Ted Cruz didn't get in his face in a debate for mocking his wife. He had all the reason to get in Trump's face.
Yes.
Right.
He had all the reason to punch him in the face. And that ended right there.
Although I think that the way you're supposed to handle it in those movies is you have to challenge them some sort of sports competition. So the correct way to do it would, of course, be a ski off, because, you know, Senator Biden is an accomplished skier. So,
Killer Hill? That's impossible.
You do have precedent with Biden and the old guy in Iowa who is like 81 years old, who was like, hey, buddy, you want to do a push-off contest? How about an IQ test, buddy? I can do that too. So we do have Joe doing that. So Joe may take off his jacket and ask DJT to do 10 right there on the stage, socially distanced from him, with Chris Wallace looking on.
That would be entertaining to watch.
Stop using your knees.
That would be amusing. I would pay good money to see that. But
you full Jack Palance at the Academy Awards and start doing one-handed push-ups.
Oh,
I mean, you don't know what Joe's got going, and so that would even be worse.
Yeah, but here's the problem: is that Trump will end up saying something like, "Well, we have to do the ones where you clap in the middle, right?" and then fail so badly that he'll say it was the rules that broke him, and he made up the rules as he went. I mean, I get frustrated, and one thing that I think can't be said, I'm just going to bring this up now, even though it's not quite in context. I mean, you know, I get repeatedly frustrated with the idea that Trump is a successful businessman. And, you know, if he had taken his inheritance and put it into an index fund and, you know, bought himself a nice yacht and all the playmates he could, you know, he'd have more money today than he has now. I mean, that's a definition of business failure. You know, forget the bankruptcies, forget the lawsuits, forget all this. He lost money versus an index fund. I mean, this is true business failure. This guy is an abomination. He is not a success by any stretch of the imagination. Frankly, he's never been successful at anything in his life except for the 2016 election. And I think that that's a thing that we need to keep in mind, is that even when he creates his own rules, he fails.
I think we're all in agreement that we're going to see some fireworks.
I think so.
I probably won't watch it. I just don't care enough.
Will it make a difference? I mean, will it move anybody? I mean,
No, I really don't think anything of these three debates is going to move the needle.
No, I mean, like Reagan's first debate in '84. I mean, he did a really poor job, and people were like, "Oh God, is this something we need to be concerned about?" But you can imagine Trump absolutely flopping, and it makes no difference in the polls.
No, and just like in the debates in 2016, I mean, Hillary Clinton wiped up the floor with Trump all three times, and I don't think the polls changed one bit.
Well, I think Trump supporters are not motivated by debate performance. You know, what happens is that let's be honest, Trump is a whiny little bitch, and so are his supporters. You know, it's, you know, I failed, but it's not my fault because, you know, whatever, you know, and maybe it wasn't their fault, but that's not the point. The point is they never even tried. You know, whether it's, you know, the idea that, you know, they didn't have enough education to succeed, or didn't have the experience to succeed, or just didn't have the motivation to succeed, whatever, it's not my fault. The president speaks to that. It is his, you know, we look at his whiny little bitching as unpresidential, unprecedented, as it were. And I think that, you know, that unfortunately speaks to a large portion of the population. Not the kind of people we normally hang out with.
Well, Jason and I will try to decipher what the hell we all saw Tuesday night on Wednesday evening, James. So you don't have to.
I wish you good luck in that. And
well, it shall be splendid. And by the way, this episode has also been splendid. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
And definitely, you do come back again. We would love to have you.
Hey, you know where to find me.
I do.
Jason,
anything in closing or even summation?
Summation. Namaste.
There you go.
Just now do 30 minutes of guided meditation.
I love the Aurora Australis behind James. So very nice choice of that.
I think it goes well with the color of my shirt.
Oh yeah. Well now we can do the green screen with your shirt. That's going to be coming helpful.
Oh, I did that. Did you see the picture I did of that forever ago, where I wore this electric green shirt and had a proper green screen behind me, and then just had my head floating in a star field? Great.
That's what we need to do to take this podcast to the next level.
Jamie's head.
Head.
Bouncing head for the singing.
Yeah. Now we're on the Champs-Élysées. Now we're in the Congo. Now we're at the oil field. Now we're at the Royal Farms.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, only you bring this out in us, Jamie.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
Special pleasure. And I hope that you in viewer and or listener land have also had a special pleasure. So for Jason Booms and Dr. James Howard, my name is Bill Woodcock. You have been watching or listening to Forward Maryland. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.